Today we're going to be talking about lesson 12.1 about adjacent and vertical angles. So if you're looking at your guided notes packet and the key ideas box, adjacent angles are two angles that have a common side and the same vertex. So key things: common side, same vertex. So the vertex is like the starting point of the angle. So if you look at the example like this, we could say that angles 1 and 2 are adjacent. They're next to each other. They have a common side and the same vertex. We could say that angles 2 and 3 are adjacent. Common side, same vertex. 3 and 4 are also adjacent. Common side, same vertex. And the same for 1 and 4. Common side, same vertex. So this is some examples of adjacent angles. Now, vertical angles are two angles that are opposite, formed by the intersection of two lines. Opposite angles. This is an abbreviation for angles that we're going to probably see quite a bit. So angles that are opposite, formed by two intersecting lines. Vertical angles are congruent. And if we think back to what we know about congruent tells us that they are equal. So if we look back to our example up here, our drawing, 1 and 3 are vertical. They are formed by intersecting lines and they are equal. So 1 and 3 would be vertical. The same goes for 2 and 4. They are formed by intersecting lines moving in opposite directions and they are equal. So those are some examples of vertical angles. So now if we look at the problems here, it says name two pairs of adjacent angles and two pairs of vertical angles in the figure below. So now there are a lot of different options that we could have. But if we're going to look at 2, for instance, we need a common side for two pairs of vertical angles. So we could say maybe ZWV. We always start at one side, go to the center, and then go to the other side, is adjacent to VWX. Now, common side, shared vertex. We could say that VWX and XWY are also are also adjacent. Common side, same vertex. There's also a couple more pairs that you could list, so you might want to try and look at those on your own. Now, if we're going to talk about vertical angles, we can see that this angle and this angle are vertical. Formed by intersecting lines moving in opposite directions, they are congruent. So vertical angle options might be VWX and ZWY. Or we could say, I'm going to make these noted a different way here. We could say VWZ and angle XWY are also vertical. Now, if we look at this next one, there are even more examples available in this one. So I am just going to pick a point and start. So if I start here with letter Q, this side, I want to be my shared side. So I know that this PJQ, oops, got the J in the middle. The vertex point always goes in the middle. So PJQ and QJK are adjacent. They share that common side. Now I could also say that, I'm going to change my marker here, PJQ and angle QJM are also adjacent. This is an angle, 2 endpoints, vertex in the middle, shares this same common side. So I have an angle here and an angle here. Now, if I go back and look, and I want to now find my vertical angles, I could say that PJN and angle KJL are vertical. They are formed by 2 pairs of intersecting lines, and they share that common vertex. Now, I might be able to say that PJK and angle, let's see, PJK and angle NJL are also vertical, formed by 2 pairs of intersecting lines going in opposite directions to get those vertical congruent angles. So again, this one, since there are more than 2 lines, you can have more variations of your correct answer. Now, using what we know about adjacent and vertical angles, are these 2 angles adjacent or are they vertical? They share a common side and a vertex, so these are adjacent. Now that we know they're adjacent, we need to find what the value of x is. This is called a straight angle. A straight angle or a straight line is worth 180 degrees. So we know that when we add these 2 together, we're going to end up with 180. So we can write an equation. X plus 85 equals 180. And we can use what we learned in chapters 1 and 11 to solve this. 180 minus 85 is 95. So we know that x is 95 degrees. Now when we look at the next one, these 2 angles are formed by 2 intersecting lines with a common vertex. That makes these vertical angles. We know that vertical angles are congruent, and we should remember that this little square in the corner means that's a right angle or a perfect corner worth 90 degrees. So if this angle is worth 90 degrees, x is also worth 90 degrees since they are congruent. Now we take our knowledge of right angles here. These are adjacent angles because they share one vertex and a common side. So we know these are adjacent. But since they are adjacent and make a right angle, we are now going to set up our equation to be 90 degrees, since we know that a right angle equals 90. So minus 1 or negative 1 plus 69 is 68. Subtract that from both sides. 2x equals 22. So x equals 11. So the value of x for this example is 11. Now, the last question asks us to draw a pair of vertical angles with a measure of 75 degrees. We know that a right angle is 90. Half of 90 is 45. So if we use our common knowledge of angles and knowing what these look like, we know that our angle is going to be slightly bigger than 45, but slightly bigger than 90. So we might want to start by drawing a straight line and thinking, okay, we know it's not a perfect corner, but it's slightly less than that. And we can continue our line through. We would then want to mark that these vertical angles are worth 75 degrees. Looking for 75 degrees. Now, I don't expect these to be perfect when we are just estimating or sketching, but they need to be reasonable. So make sure you're thinking, is this reasonably looking like a 75-degree angle?